Hi, everybody. This week you're going to be learning about the history of special education, and I hope that you will read the material and learn more about this field and how it became what it is today. There's a saying, history is prologue, meaning that things that happened before us will happen again. And I've seen that in my lifetime in special education, where we go sort of in these circular motions and trying to get things right. An example of that is integrating students into public school settings and also going for full inclusion. When I started in the field, people with special needs were almost always, in my experience, segregated from general education students. I mean, segregated as in different buildings. Like there would be a whole campus for students with special needs. And that was considered state of the art. And it was the way that, we specialists could congregate and do good work in that place that was dedicated just to those students. Well, of course, we came to understand that people with disabilities need to be a part of the community, and you cannot be a part of your community when you're segregated. So, a lot of time and energy and fights, bad fights, big fights, went into desegregating, into putting closing schools that were standalone centers and putting students into the public school system. And a lot of that came from push from parents who they wanted their kids to be able to play in the neighborhood with the kids that went to their school and things like that. So it's sort of like, we're talking about self-determination and all the things that we work on. And here are families saying, well, here's an area of self-determination, like we want him to be able to have social skills and a social life. And it's much more likely that that happens in the neighborhood if he goes to a neighborhood school. So you know that whole story. And I guess it was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know. I was reading an article, and it was about these people, this group of parents, who were suing a school district because they wanted a special school for their children, because they wanted experts working with their children, and they didn't want them to be in a setting where they felt like they weren't getting what they deserved. That when the schools were situated, as I said earlier, in a segregated campus, they were getting far more supports and services to build skills than they were getting in the public school. Now, I don't think that's probably true, but I don't know that. But whatever. When I read the headline, I thought, I cannot believe this. It's come full circle already. We've got people already saying, let's go back to those schools. So that's why history is important, because you know what works and you know what doesn't work. You realize what the good parts of a plan are, but you know which ones to skip, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I think knowing the history is really important. It's very much a civil rights movement. That's really what the special ed movement is. It came out of the civil rights movement, in particular, Brown versus Board of Education. But prior to that ruling and prior to the first federal law in 1975, there were all kinds of forces at work that were trying to establish educational programs for people with disabilities and also to access public education as a right, which it had not been for students actually up until 1975. Within some states, maybe with state legislation, but nothing at the federal level was guaranteed until 1975. So I know like a girl that I grew up with who has Down syndrome. She couldn't go to school because she wasn't toilet trained. And that was all they needed to keep her out of kindergarten because they tried to enroll her. Her mother, like many mothers in America, were all over the place working on developing schools, centers, and programs. If it weren't for the mothers and the fathers too, don't get me wrong, fathers did quite a lot, but I really give credit to the mothers, okay, because they were out on the front line And they were pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and they weren't going to take no. And I think what's hard for you to understand at your ages, because I don't know how old you all are, but I just bet you I'm at least 20 years older than all of you. And given that, I can tell you what that environment was at the time. There really what people really didn't understand why, retarded kids, and that would have been the word they used, why they would be in the schools. I mean, like, what's a retarded kid get out of school? Okay? And they oftentimes meant that, and we're not mean, not mad, not ugly, prejudiced. It was the idea that they're broken, okay? That's why the term now is so derogatory, because it became like broken, defective. So they're broken, they're defective, and so therefore they can't be a part of the mainstream, and they should just stay as far away, from the public eye, um, as they can. And that was really the way people looked at disabilities. When I was a youngster, there was a lot of fear around people with disabilities. There were a lot of ideas that, well, I know one that just came to mind. There were ideas that people with disabilities are dirty. They're somehow, uniquely dirty, germ ridden, that kind of thing. Like, one of the things that makes me so angry, I haven't seen it for a long time, but, is when you go to, for example, like what would be called like a sheltered workshop or something, where there are people working there, okay, people with disabilities are working there, and you go in and there's a staff bathroom and a client bathroom. What are you telling me? Okay, at my university I have supervisors too, and we all go to the same bathroom. That's what I mean. There was this big, like, don't go there, that's the client bathroom. There was a lot of just really negative imagery, negative ideas, fear, lots of fear that permeated the culture about all of it. And it was really quite sad because it really damaged a lot of families. What I mean by that is, well, let me just use my friend as an example. Honestly, I don't know I don't know how aware she would have been of being excluded. Um, I'm just not sure how aware. Okay, I'm not sure of that. But I can tell you that it really hurt her parents when she was excluded. They noticed it. They saw it. They saw the kids, snicker, say things, etc. And so it was just a very, very difficult time, and it's unbelievable to me now that we sit in meetings and fight regarding how included a student is going to be when we spent so much time talking about excluding students. So I tip my hat to mothers for all that they did to bring this movement about, and it really was a movement. Um, it has become less so, I think, and I hope special ed teachers continue to carry the torch. I'm working with some teachers now who I like very much, and one of the reasons I enjoy working with them so much is all they do all the time is try to figure out how their kids, people they work with, couldn't be successful and connected. They're always trying to connect them, around the school and things like that. But it's that focus they have on their well being. It's that focus they have on making their lives better. It's that focus on, we have a challenge. Let's see what we can do to get past that and do something better. I had as a young woman there today I was working with who's doing some biting and things, and we're just trying to figure out how to keep her hands busy. And so I'm at the Dollar Tree today buying all this stuff. Maybe she'll play with this. Maybe she'll go, do this. Got some Velcro. Maybe that'll work. The point is that we want her to succeed. I mean, it's like it drives us. it's fun. Like to me those like things like figuring out how to help this girl, that to me is like a detective story. Like, like what can we find? What can we do? I don't know why I get into it, but I do. So it's the kind of drive that you want the people that you work with to have more valued lives, that you will work as hard as you can in every single way to make that come to be. And that's really how the movement, when I came in to the special ed world, that's really how the movement was at that time. Pressuring legislators, making people uncomfortable, going to school board meetings, and there are people who really took a lot of risks and a lot of challenges, because just like race, sexuality, gender, love, I don't know, ethnicity, any of the things that we discriminate on, it was the same way. It's like, it's okay. We don't. It's not that I don't like those people, as long as they stay over there. All that stuff. Just same thing was playing out. So now, I did put an article up for you to read. With this chapter, it's very short, but I think poses some really good questions about where are we now. What's next. And how do we get to the next place? One of the things that I appreciated in the article was this notion that we would maybe start training everyone like special education teachers, and that we would no longer have a distinguishing credential. Everybody would be a teacher, but you would know how to work with students who have disabilities. I just thought that was really fascinating, because, I think the thing that special ed teachers do well is differentiate the curriculum. And I think that we have a good sense of learning characteristics and strategies and things like that. And as the schools become more diverse, this sort of teaching across the middle, I think that's what they called it. But this kind of just teaching the curriculum while you're 30 kids sitting, desks and look straight at you. That was my generation. That's not happening anymore. You're getting less and less, homogeneous groups of kids, and you're getting a lot more. Not just diversity in language and culture and background and that kind of thing, but you're seeing a lot of just differences cognitively. For example, we see kids who have had drug exposure in utero, and they are very different in terms of the way they develop, the way they think, etc. So it really behooves all of us to be able to do it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thought, that maybe at some point we would move up to a place where everyone becomes a special education teacher. One thing I'll end with is something that you might want to look up if you want, called social role valorization, SRV, social role valorization. And the guy who talks about this, writes about it, I think he might have just passed away, but anyway, he was the guru. Is Wolfsenberger, and why I can't think of his first name, I don't know. Wolfsenberger, WOLF, Wolf, SENBERGER. Anyway, social role valorization simply means that we raise the status of the people that we're working with, so that they're always seen in the best light. And I think one thing that I have wanted people to think about for a long time is, how is it that everything that we do focuses positively on the people that we work with, and gives the impression to people around that these people have social value. It's a simple concept in a way, but in some ways it's really kind of difficult. And I can give you, several examples of social role valorization. A simple one I saw the other day was a special ed class lined up at high school. They were all lining up to go. I don't know where they were going, but it doesn't matter. But they were lining up, and then they got in the line, and I totally love the teacher, and he's really cool. And I said, "Hey, look, just so you know, high school students don't line up." See, that just says there comes the class. One of the reasons, and I'm not going to say it again because you're probably going to think I'm trying to be rude, but the R word, one of the reasons that word to me is powerful, a lot of people think it's powerful because it's disgusting. To me, it reminds me of that um, it's not even mean. It was just the honest feelings and thoughts that people had about those with disabilities that were unfair and untrue. So it's like there goes the R word class. Not meaning I'm being mean, meaning that's what the R word people do. You know, they walk on their little line. That makes you stand out. That's just one thing. It makes you stand out. It might be that I've said to parents who I know it's not a cost issue or a money issue, you know, things about like, you know, can you perk her outfit up a little bit? Kids are wearing jeans now. Does she like jeans? Just so we raise the social value of someone. That's really all that it is. I have told a funny story about like I had two different interns when I was in Kansas teaching, one male, one female, and they were both just unbelievably good looking. They were like Ken and Barbie, I swear. They were so unbelievably good looking. They were so unbelievably nice, and all that kind of stuff. But let's go back to the good looking part. All the boys in the school were in love with her, and all the girls were in love with him, and probably a few the other way around, but not that I knew at the time. But oh my God, I can't remember her name, but his name was Tim. This girl's a big Tim, Tim, Tim. The reason I'm telling you this is we had a lot of transport that we needed to do with kids in chairs. Oh my gosh, the kids loved going with Tim. Tim was cute. The girls all liked him. They all got to, you know, hang around and stuff. When Tim would go out on the playground, this one kid's name was Craig, I remember. He was in a chair. He was just in hog heaven because they were all giving him attention because he was with Tim. Okay, now I'm not talking about manipulating the environment, meaning like let's make Craig think these are his friends. That's manipulative and mean. This was just naturally occurring, and all I'm going to say is, you know, the kids that I was working with, they really got a deal out of it. Um, I could go into a much longer story, which I wish I told that one instead. I won't, but I'll tell you this. From another situation like that, we did have kids who literally became friends with some of our students, and it was through Tim. So it happens that when we raise social value and social status for our students, it happens that we are giving a clearer message that this is welcoming. You know, come on in. It's the way to be. Like we're really cool in here, that kind of thing. I see a lot of it where I'm working in the high school that I am now, and I'm just absolutely delighted by it. And I thought that I would end with, you know, just a couple of things. First is that when I was in undergraduate school, so this would have been 19, probably 81 or something like that. I had an internship at a state institution here in Illinois that was so mind blowing. I can't even. I just can't even tell you. This can't tell you. It was mind blowing. I'm in a bad way. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I mean, we walked in, and I'm just gonna be blunt. There were people. These it was in a men's ward. There were all these men in different stages of dress. Some of them were masturbating. Right when we walked in, some guy was eating his own feces. It was so horrific. I can't even. I literally couldn't believe I was living and standing and breathing in the United States of America. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You know, that is not that long ago, and that stuff was going on. And you know, that's why for me, I have this sense of like, don't ever stop fighting because we don't ever want to go back to those things. That was a horrible, horrible time. And God bless the parents who put their kids there. A lot of times they were just told to. They didn't know what to do with them. They didn't know how to handle them. They were get sold a bill of goods, so the parents didn't oftentimes know. There were doctors in that era who would tell parents it was best for them just to forget they ever had this kid and move on with their life. So there are people who just dropped off at institutions and never knew their families. It was a horrible experience for me. I just couldn't believe it. And so every now and again, you know, when I'm thinking about something, you know, in special ed and I'm getting really upset about it, I'll think, oh, well, you know, at least we don't have those institutions anymore. And I was at a concert, end of last school year, and this probably doesn't sound like it ties in, but bear with me. And there's this guy in one of the classes who's on the spectrum, and every now and then he just jumps out of his seat. He does this, I mean, wild rocking. He rocks, 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 and he'll rock and rock and rock and rock. Anyway, this concert was going on the stage, and all of a sudden, this guy jumps up. He starts rocking and doing his thing in the middle of it. And I turned around and I looked back at the audience of high school students who see these guys all the time, right? Nobody even looked at him. I couldn't believe it. Nobody even looked at him. I was like, has it gotten this cool that he's just this kid that they know has autism and so he rocks over there? That should have really been disruptive to people. Or what I should say wasn't that disruptive, but I mean, it should have made people turn and go, what's that? What's going on? Nothing like that. Nothing like that. So the reason I said it doesn't like they go together, that's like bookmarks to my history. There's like this going into a place that's so outrageous that I can't even fathom it. And then they're sitting here with a bunch of high schoolers who have not a thought about a student with some pretty serious kind of tick little issues that he has with his autism. It doesn't bother him at all, at all. That we've come that far is really amazing to me. And the only reason we've come that far is because people kept fighting for it and pushing ahead. And that's why I always hope that when people leave this course, they have a little bit more feeling of advocacy in their gut, that they want to do things that they can to help continue, I think, what's been a really important civil rights movement. I think there's a lot more to do. So as we learn together this semester, hopefully we'll have more ideas about how we can do that together. Thanks.